the worksheets. How do we calculate everything? That's what I consider the fun part. We're going to be going through some of those shortly, but first, here's Bill Jarocki to talk about those worksheets and how to get them and how they're going to work.
At this point in the guidebook, you're ready to use the paper forms to design your own rate study. But what I'd like to do is encourage you to go to the website, www.rcap.org/rateguide, and download the electronic versions of the same worksheets. They're built in Microsoft Excel. They're preloaded with formulas, so when you enter your data, it transfers in easily and all the calculations are done for you.
The first step we have to do is complete an income and expense worksheet. This is what's going on. Where's our revenue coming from? Where's our expenses going? This worksheet that you can download. It is an Excel file, and you'll see at the bottom there's different tabs. Those are the different sheets that we're going to work through here in the next few minutes. The income and expense sheet, like I said, this is divided up monthly. It's pretty self-explanatory. It is in Excel format, so you can go in and change the line items to correspond to your system instead of the one that's there, but you do get the idea. And this will give you a good handle on where your funding is going and where it's coming from. And this is an annual form. I'd highly suggest you do three to five of them so that you look at it over a period of time. You can get an idea of where you've been. Once you know where you've been, it's pretty easy to figure out where you need to go. If we go on to the next slide, how do we spread an increase fairly among our customers? That's a challenge. We consider it an art. No one likes rate increases, but doing your homework, gathering your information, looking at the system that we're going to go through here in the next few minutes, will give you the data, will give you the information to present to your customers that you have done your homework, you've looked at it, you're charging them fairly. If you charge them fairly, you charge them regularly, and you treat them right, they don't have a whole lot of room to complain very loud. And that's the main thing that we want to look at. Are we doing it fairly? And gathering history is part of that rate study. If we go on to the next slide, and that history part is probably maybe the most difficult item of doing a rate study or rate analysis. But we want to find out how many customers are using how much water in an average month. We want to analyze that water usage for the customers. How many bills are going out for 1,000 gallons of water, for 2,000 gallons of water, etc. And then we want to interpret that data. What does this all mean? What is it telling us? What can we glean from this process? And then our worksheets are going to help us complete a fairness check. When you adjust the rates, you want to make sure that you're doing it fairly to everybody, and you're spreading the cost out to all the customers. Like I said, this is kind of an art. It's not an easy thing to do, and we'll get into a little bit of that later. There's no hard and fast rule. There's no black and white, step 1, 2, 3, but we're getting as many steps here as we can to help guide you through it. How do we gather that data? If you downloaded that the Excel file, the worksheets, the sheet on the right here is a worksheet. We want to take, and this is the way I used to do it years ago before computers, how many bills went out for under 1,000 gallons. And I go through the meter books and I mark each little tick there, and every fifth one I got to cross one off. And it was a very tedious and cumbersome process, but that's the way we went through and we did the bill analysis. So you don't have to have a computer, but they sure help. You've gathered this data for that customer or for that month. You put it into the spreadsheet. What that's showing is the month of April is highlighted. It's telling us how many total customers we had. You know, that's changing also. Is that good? Can it be explained? Have we had people go on vacation? Have we not billed? Have we had people leave town? Or nothing happened and the number changes? Start investigating. Did we lose a customer someplace? We sure want to make sure we get everybody billed. The yellow data, it's kind of hard to read here, but that's what we're going to be following through on the next few slides. That's what we want to look at a little later. If we go to the next slide, we come to part 2 of looking at this, and there's a difference between residential customers and between industrial or large users. We want to track maybe the 10 largest, 15 or 20 largest customers that we have. We want to keep track of those the same way as we do the residential customers. But we want to keep track of their data because we might want to look at that in a little different way as time goes on. This will also provide data that we can track all of our usage, and it goes back to what Dan was talking about on your lost water or non-revenue. How much are we billing compared to what they're pumping at the water plant? The next slide is the customers. This is where we start to look at some of the data. And if you can see here, it kind of tells us in the yellow part the average number of customers that we have in that category and what percentage of the total customers that is. 0 to 1,000 here is average. We're averaging 20 customers a month, just over. That's 17% of our total customers. They're using under 1,000 gallons a month. The percentage of the average water used is 2.1%. So 17% of our customers are using 2% of our water. Wow. We start to see things as we go down that column. We can get down to some of the other numbers, and you see what's going on. You know, a lot of your customers use small water. Maybe a small amount of your customers use a major portion. Different communities will get different results here. So if you're working one of these spreadsheets and your numbers come up that's a lot different than what you see here as the examples, don't worry about it. I don't want to say your community is different, but it is. Everybody is a little bit different. What you might see here is that around 50% of your customers are probably going to use 4,000 to 5,000 gallons or less of water. And going on to the next slide, as part of our fairness, this is where we start checking on our fairness. Customers, if you're having a public hearing on a rate setting or rate increase, customers will come in and complain. We know that. They always do. And they're going to, rumors, you're not charging me the same as you're charging somebody else, this, that, the other. This is where if you've done your homework, you can answer those questions. You can explain to the customer that you did do your homework and you did investigate it, and here's where we can start to do that equity check or the fairness check. Column G on here, under the word fairness, has the equity column. In this particular case, the 0 to 1,000 gallons, the top line, who was using, there's that average of 20 customers, they are bringing in about just over 7% of the revenue. And the target is they should be bringing in about 10%. Well, that's about 2 3/4% off. The last column we have, some of the big users, or the last row, The big users down at the bottom, the average revenue coming in is 16%, and the target should be about 11%. They're bringing in 5% more than what they should, to be fair. So what can we do about it? The goal is if you're within plus 2% or minus 2%. So 2.75 is outside of that, 5.1 sure is. So there has to be some adjustment in that rate then as to get it more fair. And I can tell you this right now, you're not going to get it so it's all exactly perfect. It will not happen, but you're doing the best that you can to be as fair about the rates and who's paying their fair share as you can. Go on to the next slide. And as we go down, and we're going to talk a little bit about fixed cost and variable cost. Touched on earlier, but fixed costs are determine how much the customer needs to pay towards the fixed cost, which is the cost of providing that service without selling any water, without producing any water. Those costs are insurance, debt payments, things along this line that you have to have. Having a staff available, the minimum electric bill. Those are all costs without producing any water. Then variable costs are how much does it cost to produce the water. Once we turn the pump on, the water starts flowing. We start treating it. We start testing it and all that. What's the cost? Those are some of the things that we figure into the base rate and the flow rate. The base rate would cover the fixed cost, and the flow rate is based upon your variable costs. The variable costs are usually done in thousands of gallons and or cubic feet, however you're doing it. But that's what that's based on. Whatever it costs for your production is what you want to do there. If we go on to the next slide, how do we handle these fixed costs and variable costs, and how do we come up with them? We go back to that income and expense statement spreadsheet. This is where it's broke down, and there's examples in here of fixed cost and variable cost and breaking it down. My experience has been you'll come up with someplace probably between 60 and 80, 75 or 80% of your costs will be fixed. That's the cost that you're going to have to pay out of your water fund, and that's not producing any water. The variable cost is going to be in the 20 to 40% range. Varies from community to community. But that water cost will also vary with the amount produced. If you're producing several million and you got a big user, some of those costs will vary versus one versus the other. On the next slide, how do we set that final base rate and the flow rate cost? Like I said, we're trying to cover those fixed systems costs in the rate schedule, and the variable cost, proportional costs, are based on the thousands of gallons used. So we want to get it on everybody on an equalized basis. Basically, we're going to take the fixed cost, divide by the number of customers, and that's our divided by 12 is our monthly cost. Plus a variable cost if we want to give them some water. That's our base rate. That fixed rate is a fixed cost. The variable expenses figure into the flow rate proportion of the rate. Usually based on the thousands of gallons. And it allows you to build a rate structure that divides the cost among the customers depending on what they use. They've all paid for the fixed rate, the minimum upfront on the base. Then after that, it's, you know, if they're a big user, they're going to pay more because they use more. Small user, they won't pay as much. The last part of this is you may wish to modify in response to local conditions and considerations. That's true. That modification is the art of rate setting. It depends upon your community. It depends on lifestyle you want. Are you a bedroom community? Are you an industrial community? Are you, do you have abundant water supply? Do you not have an abundant water supply? Along that line. So this is where you set up your rate structure. Now if we go to the next slide, step 4, we're going to see how it works. This spreadsheet, we're looking at the base rate is set at $18 per customer per month. Brings in $2,000 in revenue. Now, we have determined on the flow rate that our rate per 1,000 gallons is $8 per 1,000. Is what we're going to charge based upon our variable rates. This example, we're looking at this sheet, our decision makers have decided, well, we're going to give 1,000 gallons in the minimum bill each month. Well, you can't afford to give anything. So you need to include that $8 in that minimum bill for that 1,000 gallons of water. So working backwards, we hope that $10 covers all their fixed costs. Because that $18 base rate has to include the fixed cost and the 1,000 gallons that they're giving away in that minimum bill. So you need to remember that. Next slide. We talk about modifying a single block rate structure. There's different block rates, but that's another subject for another day. As I mentioned a little earlier, there are circumstances that would require or allow you to consider making changes, so it's not black and white. The art of the deal, if you will. The base rate, commercial or industrial or anybody that has a higher demand for water, they may have a higher fixed rate, base rate, due to the cost of providing service. They may have a 4-inch line versus a 3/4-inch line for a house. They should be charged on the basis of a 4-inch line. If they open up the valve to their facility, 4-inch line of water is going to put a lot bigger demand on your water system than what a 3/4-inch line is. And they should pay for that. The ability to be able to open that valve and have that water supplied to them when they ask for the demand. Some systems may want to minimize their costs to their commercial and industrial users. I've seen this where, well, you know, it comes that time where we don't want to lose the factory. They do pay taxes in town. We do have an income tax. We want to keep people employed so they can pay their water bills at home. Maybe we can cut their usage, the rate that we charge them on their usage, the variable cost, which gets into a different block rate. So the more you use, the less you pay. You have to remember you can't charge less than what it costs you to produce, though. You got to charge at least equal to what it costs you to produce it per 1,000. But you can make some adjustments there. You might want to change. You might want to charge more for the more they use to promote conservation. You may be reaching capacity on your water plant or on your wastewater system, and you want to cut flow. You want to buy some time before you do an expansion. Charge a little more for those. Make them pay if they're going to use a lot more water. It's a conservation tactic that you can use. It's part of that art of the rate setting. We'll go on to the next slide. Having been through this many times, I cannot stress the importance of rate education. All the trainings I do, it's educate. We need to educate ourselves. This rate setting is a team effort. One person cannot do it all. It's going to take finance people. It's going to take management people. It's going to take the decision makers, the board. Educate yourself, because you're going to have to educate the board, the decision makers. You're going to have to educate the customers and the public. You need to prime them for it. Let them know what's coming. Different ways to get the word out. Mailings, newspaper articles. Go out on the speaking tour to different organizations. Some of the increases, I'll tell you, time and time again, small increases are better than large increases. That's sticker shock. Everybody can handle small ones, especially if they're scheduled and they know each year their water bill is going to go up a little bit. Because I've been to many a public meeting where the public's asking, why didn't you people do this years ago? Why did you not raise rates? It's a lot different than being at the one and why are you doing it now? Of course, scheduling increases that don't happen would probably be best of all, but that's not going to happen, because your cost in operating a water utility and providing safe, potable water to your customers, to the citizens of your community, is constantly increasing, because our bills go up just the same as the bills do in the households, and the people have to understand that. And I think most of the people do. They just need to be informed, be able to answer their questions, and have the facts in front of them to make those decisions. To finish up here, there's a couple videos from Skip Rand and John Franks talking about educating those board members, the ones that have to make the decision to do that, and what they need to know to make those informed decisions. And then John Franks is going to talk a little bit about getting the word out to the customers. So we'll have the video now.
Why is it important for elected officials to tour their facilities? Extremely important. First of all, I'm a very big believer in is what you see is what you get. When you go out there, you're going to look at the age, appearance, condition of the facilities, and you're also going to get a feel for how well they're being maintained. Have the operator take you around and show you the equipment, so that when it comes budget time and we're talking about equipment replacement, it'll stick in your mind what this thing looked like. Ask them how long that particular component's been in place. If you have water running across the floor, that may indicate that maintenance is not being properly performed. But if you go into a building and you got water running over the floor and it's because there's a hole in the roof, then you need to replace the roof. It's not the operator's fault. So you need to become familiar with what you own. And also, remember, the citizens are driving by these places a lot of times, and they get pretty upset when they look over and see something that looks, like it's been there a million years, and it's not being maintained. They're wondering where their money's going.
As soon as you know there's going to be a rate increase, or you think there possibly could be one, you need to get the word out as quick as possible so your constituents and ratepayers will know that there could possibly be a rate increase coming down the pike. You need to keep that transparent and tell them why you need a rate increase and how it is figured, and give them a chance to ask questions, and try to keep it as transparent as you possibly can. Some of the methods that we've used in order to get that word out is we put it out on our city webpage, and then also our city Facebook page. And then also we post it around town in the high traffic areas, such as the post office and the library, the grocery store, and some of those areas that a lot of people frequent. So if you are contemplating a rate increase, you need to get it out quickly and make it transparent.
Wow. Well, in a very short amount of time, we've covered a lot of material. And rate setting isn't easy and often requires some help. So what we'd like to do is to refer you to the Rural Community Assistance Partnership and to ask you to look at that website, www.rcap.org, to review this webinar again, to download the guidebook, to download other materials that are available on that website, and to get contact information for the Rural Community Assistance Partnership partner who's nearest to you. Thank you for joining us today. We wish you luck in this process of rate setting and in sustaining the utilities that you have in your community. Thank you very much.